Hey everyone, welcome. It is great to see you. You are officially our youngest Lunch and Learn crowd by average age yet, which I love, and it's so good to see you here. I know that it's summertime and it's a Thursday at noon, and some of you are here because your parents told you needed to be here, and others of you are here because you want to be here and you want to set yourself up. For those of you who don't know, I'm Pastor Brian here at Wooddale. I'm our outreach pastor. I oversee our family resource initiative. And by the way, like every Thursday at noon, we have one of these. On your table is a list of some of the upcoming lunch and learns. We do have a couple more that are geared more for students this summer than our older adult population. So another one just to kind of have on your radar, James Medina is going to be here in August, I believe, and he's going to be talking about, or is it July? I don't know, how to thrive spiritually in your college years. James is at our Edina campus. He is the national director for Cruise Ministry for Latino students around the country called Destino, and it is amazing. And James grew up right here at Wooddale Church. I was his youth pastor back in the day, so I can't wait for you to hear from James. We've got some other stuff, too, for students during the summer, so check those out. We'd love to have you join us, invite people to come on out. Today is going to be a great day. Number one, because everyone, whether you recognize it or not, has to deal with the reality of finance on a day-by-day basis. And this is a topic that is so important. For people who are married, it's the number 2 reason that people get divorced in our country today is differences over finances or getting into financial difficulty. And so building a strong foundation now isn't just going to help you as a student, but it's going to help you in your marriage, and it's going to help you throughout your life. And I couldn't be more excited about who our speaker is today. So Steve Woodley is somebody I love. He came here earlier this year. How many of you were at Steve's evening presentation that he did on college funding? Did any of you make that one earlier this year? Okay, so different crowd. We're going to do another one of those. Steve doesn't know that yet next year with Steve because it was so well received. And he did kind of a whole deal on college funding. He's going to hit some of that today with you all as well. But Steve is a certified financial planner. He's somebody who is a dad. He's had kids go through college himself, and he knows what that's like. He knows what it's like to be on that end. But he is somebody who just uses the gifts that he has to make a huge difference in the lives of others. He's really, really active in our men's ministry, too, and helps lead a ministry here called Men's Huddle on Wednesday night. So if you're a dad or a guy around here and you want to know about that, you can talk to Steve about that afterwards as well. But we're going to let Steve take over. He's going to teach for about 40, 45 minutes, and then we're going to open it up at the end for some Q&A. And then if you stick around to the very end, I've got some giveaways that we're going to give away today, too. So it's worth sticking around for. All right?
Just advancing the slides. Is
yes.
Do that?
Gotcha.
Would you rather have control? Yeah. So the way this got started, Brian had actually reached out to me a couple of weeks ago. Okay. And if you've ever gotten Brian requests asking you to do something, you know it's pretty hard to say no to Brian. He starts out the email with about 2 paragraphs of just praise and compliments, and it's like, how can you say no after that? So here I am. Brian's original was, let's talk about budgeting for college. And I said, well, that's a good starting point, but if I was going to be talking to a group of younger people, and their parents too, I would talk about a lot more than just budgeting. And so the definition and kind of the topic that we decided to talk about was more than just budgeting, and it really has to do with the basics of personal finance. Some of this stuff, just like Brian said, I don't care what you're going to do, whether you graduate from high school and you go to college, or you don't go to college, you go to trade school or whatever it is, but at some point, you're going to have to deal with money. And so that's something we can't avoid, even though some of us like to avoid money. And so just knowing some of the basics is super, super important. So I'm going to start out talking about budgeting. Okay. So this is really just budgeting for college, but these are the things, I'll just real quickly touch on. So what is a budget? Why do I need a budget? What are the different types of budgets? How to prepare a budget, and then also just a sample budget. And then there are a couple of really good apps if you're going to create a budget. Some people just prefer, like me, just prefer a piece of paper, like a Google Sheet or Excel spreadsheet. But there are, for everybody else who is 24 years and older, I'm sure you want to do it on your phone, and there's ways to do it on your phone. So, all right. So let's start out. What is a budget? A budget is a plan. It's a plan for tracking your income and expenses over a specific period of time. So typically over a couple months. So a lot of times what people do is they'll put together a 6-month budget, or they'll put together a whole year budget, or maybe it's a school year budget. But a budget, just like the word there that's underlined, it's a plan. Another thing that a budget is, it's a tool. What is it a tool for? It's a tool for really managing your money, for managing your finances, and making sure that you're not overspending. So keep that in mind, that is what a budget is. It's a plan, it's a tool. So why do we even need one? As I mentioned, it's going to help you manage your money and develop really good money habits. And when we talk about money habits and good money habits, we're primarily talking about the way that you spend your money. And a budget is going to help you differentiate between needs and wants. I don't know if you're like I am, but most people are. If we put together a list of our needs on one side, that's usually a pretty short list, and you put together a list of all your wants on the other side, and that's a pretty much unlimited list, and you can keep adding to it. So when you've got a budget and you realize that you've only got a certain amount of money to spend, it helps you to differentiate between what's a need and what's a want. Whoops, that didn't work. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what I did there, but there we go. All right. So there's a couple different types of budgets. When my kids were little and in high school, we used something called the 80-10-10 budget. And you'll see these percentages vary depending on where you're looking. But the 80-10-10 budget was a dollar comes in, and what am I going to do with that dollar? So 80% of it I can spend on myself, 10% of it I need to save, and 10% of it I'm going to give to church or give it to some organization that I really believe in. So it's, again, there's these buckets of money. Some of it is for yourself, but some of it is also to be saved for the future, and then some of it is going to be used to bless others. So that's a very simple one. There's another one, if anybody's familiar with Financial Peace or Dave Ramsey, he uses something called the zero-based budget, which is every dollar has a place. And so you're going to use every dollar and put it into these little buckets. So that's another way to do it. And then what my mom and dad used to do is the envelope budget system. So they literally used to take dollar bills, stuff them in an envelope. This is our eating out budget for the month. This is our grocery budget for the month. This is our, whatever, entertainment budget for the month. So some people still use that. There's actually, as I'm going to show you, there's a virtual way to do that so that you're not actually filling these envelopes with money, but it's just a different way of doing it. How do you prepare a budget? List all your sources of income. Does anybody know what income is? Anybody? One of you dads, you got, money you make, yep. So it's the money coming in. And for purposes of a budget, we're going to use everything that comes in. So, for example, you get an allowance, you get money from grandpa and grandma for your birthday. You know, that's all income, okay? So you want to list all your income sources. Your expenses is just the opposite. Those are the things that you spend money on. And there's going to be two different kinds of expenses. There's going to be something called fixed expenses, and the fixed expenses are going to stay the same every single month. So maybe your phone bill is exactly the same every month. Or if you're renting an apartment, the rent is going to be the same every month. Those are just called fixed expenses. On the other hand, you've got something else called variable expenses, and variable expenses, they vary. They're going to change from month to month. So if you got variable expenses, maybe it's travel, maybe it's the amount that you spend on gasoline every month, but it's going to change typically from month to month. So you're going to add up all your income, you're going to add up all your expenses, and the difference between those two, hopefully you have money left over, and then you would have a cash surplus, or you're going to have a cash deficit because you spent too much. So really what a budget is just, it's that plan to help you to manage the money so that you're not running a cash deficit every month, because you can't go on very long doing that. So what does a budget look like? Let me just give you an example of this. And I know you can't probably see that real well, but let's just say that you were a college student and you were going back to the final semester, the spring semester of your classes, and you wanted to put together a budget for the last 5 months of the year. This might be what it looks like. I don't know, when I was in college, my mom and dad gave me $100 a month allowance to just spend on, you know, whatever I wanted to, as long as it wasn't beer, but I somehow managed to do that. So you got allowance, did work study, and then you'll notice one there, the month of March, have a miscellaneous. That's my birthday month, and grandpa and grandma always give me $200 for my birthday. So there's all my income for the first 5 months of the year, and then the bottom part is the expenses. And so you'll notice, like in the month of January, I had a lot in school supplies because I needed to get my books for that spring semester. There was a lot for gas in the month of March because I was going to go on a spring break vacation, and I knew the driving was going to be a lot more. So, and also in the month of March is when my auto insurance bill is due. So I'm going to need to pay the auto insurance bill. And obviously that month ends up being more money out the door than in the door. So this is really what a budget looks like. That is the plan part of it. But the next step in that is recording what you actually did spend. So the plan is great, but unless you go back and you compare it to what you actually spent, it's really not that meaningful. And so you want to make sure, and you'll be able to do that if you're using a budget app. I apologize, I can't show it on here, but you're always going to want to compare what was my budget amount and what did I actually spend it on. So the budget to the actual. Okay. There is, as I mentioned, there's a couple of really good apps for it. Just based on what I've read, Mint is like the best one overall. Very easy to use, and just provides you with all the information you need. There's another one called Good Budget, which, as I mentioned before, you have the, for people that are just kind of want a simple envelope budgeting system, that can be a really good one because it's like a virtual version of envelope budgeting. And then there's another one called Honeydew, which is really nice, particularly if you're a college kid and you want to do a budget with somebody else, like your parent. It's really, really easy to work with two different people on it. So I think it's really designed for a husband and a wife who are both obviously using the same budget, but it also can work really well for a college student and one of their parents. So budgeting, just, you know, bottom line on budgeting, it's a tool, it's a plan. and it helps you really to just manage your money better. It also teaches you how to prepare for those unexpected expenses, which happens quite a bit when you get to be an adult. I was just on a phone call this morning with it's a group of guys that we have a Thursday morning call with, and the prayer request for one of the guys who said, you know, in the last 2 weeks I've had my washing machine break down, so I need a new washing machine, had a plumber out to look at our dishwasher. Not only did I get his bill, but then he told me we needed a new dishwasher, and oh, by the way, I need a root canal, which, number one, a root canal is not fun, but number two, it's very expensive. And he said, those are things that how do you plan for stuff like that? And so a budget really just helps you to plan for those unexpected things. All right, enough about budgeting. So, a couple other topics I want to talk about. First one is credit. What is credit? And this is the formal definition. It's the ability to borrow money or access goods or services with the understanding that you'll pay it back later, usually with interest. So, in effect, credit is a loan. Just think of credit as being a loan, okay? And there's two things that you have to know about credit. Number one, whoever is loaning you that money wants to get repaid. You may be the nicest person in the world, but they're not going to give you that money without the expectation that they're going to get it repaid. And the second thing you have to know about it is they're going to charge you interest for the length of time that you have their money. That's how they make their money, is by charging you interest. So, it's a loan, and when you pay it back, you're going to pay it back with interest. So for high school and college students, two most common types of credit you're going to deal with. Anybody want to take a guess what they might be? Credit card? Yep. What was that? School loans. Thank you very much. Yep, so those are the ones that you're going to be interested in. So, nobody ever told you should never sit that close to the speaker? You know why? Because you call on me. You know what this is? Not much difference, they look the same. They actually work very, very differently. So let's talk about that for a second. So what's the difference between a credit card and a debit card? Because there's a big difference. So I'll just put up this little graphic here. So if you look at the left-hand side, credit cards, that is where really the credit card company is giving you a loan, with the expectation that you will repay them for that, okay? And with a credit card, they typically send you a monthly bill. So you're going to get your statement. It looks like this. They get your statement every month, and it will show you how much you've charged on that credit card in the last month and what the total is that you need to pay, okay? So that's what happens with the credit card. Also, the credit card, the last thing up there, credit card impacts your credit score. And I'll explain what a credit score is in a second. The debit card is very, very different. The debit card, no one is loaning you money. That money is coming right out of your bank account. So this debit card is attached to my bank account. And when I use that, like the next day, so if I'm buying groceries at Costco, and I use this card, the next day, because usually there's a little bit of a delay, they're going to take that money right out of my bank account. So I am not getting a loan. That money is coming right out of my bank account, and I better have that money in my bank account. That is the big difference. There are no monthly payments on it, and it doesn't have any impact on your credit report. So a debit card is just like basically cash or a check, because that money's coming right out of your account. Credit card, on the other hand, once you've charged it, you have until you get your statement to actually pay that, and it will give you the details of how you're going to pay it, okay? So, impact on credit score. It helps at this point to really just take a step back and say, what is a credit score? And let me start out by saying, I'm going to start out with something called a credit report. And you're going to hear these two terms a lot: credit report, credit score. So a credit report is a record of all of the credit that you have used over the years. So credit cards, loan, automobile loans, stuff like that. It's like a report card. It's going to have all that history. And included in your credit report is the history of how long you've been managing your credit accounts, how much debt you currently have, and what your repayment history has been. So prior to this meeting, I had just pulled my credit report, which is, you can always get your own credit report. I think you can get it right now anytime there's 3 different credit reporting agencies, but you can get it anytime for free. It's really interesting what you find in these, especially when you're my age and you've been using credit for a long time. I mean, this is a 20-page report. So there's stuff on here, like there's a history here of a Firestone account that I opened in 2010. I don't think I ever used that card. It's still showing up 13 years later on my credit report. Here's one for Hyundai. I bought a Hyundai. I've paid off that car years ago. It's still showing up on here. There's one on here for Kohl's. I don't even remember having a Kohl's card. So it must have been somebody that asked me at the checkout line, do you want to get 10% off your purchase and open a credit card? So the bottom line, though, is your experience using credit is going to go on a credit report, and it's going to stay on there for a long time. So it is very important the way that you use credit. And let me show you. So, and then coming out of your credit report is something else called a credit score. So remember how the credit report, so this thing is sort of a report card. Your credit score is taking all of this information and distilling it into a single number. So it's like a grade on your report card. It's like a grade. In a credit score, it's really just a numerical value. It's a 3-digit number. But really what credit agencies use it for people that are potentially going to loan you money, is to figure out whether you're high risk or low risk. Because remember, they want to get repaid. They want to make sure they get repaid. And so if you're a higher risk, meaning less likelihood that they'll get paid, then your credit score is going to reflect that, and you're going to have a lower credit score. On the other hand, if you have a really high credit score, then you're probably not going to have any trouble getting loans from a credit card company or from, a mortgage if you're going to buy a house. But the number one thing that goes into your credit score is what is your repayment history. So you took out credit, and then how have you repaid it? What's been your experience with repaying it? And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But this is what a credit score looks like. So it could be as low as 300, could be as high as 850. And every adult in this room has a credit score. So they may not know what it is, but every adult has a credit score. And it is a very, very important number because it has a lot of implications. And I'll tell you why it matters. Why does your credit score matter? It matters when you're applying for a mortgage or any other type of loan. You go in and you buy a car and you need a car loan. They're going to pull a credit report and look at your credit score. It matters when you're renting an apartment. It matters when you're buying auto insurance. Okay? Even getting the insurance, your credit score matters. When you're applying for a job, there's a lot of employers that are going to pull a credit report on you. And when you're buying a cell phone. So that credit report is super, super important. So what does that mean for an 18 or a 19 or a 20-year-old, okay, who really doesn't have a whole lot of experience working with credit and probably doesn't have a credit report? What you want to do, here's what it means. What you want to do is establish that on your own terms and start building a credit history. And so you start slow, but you build your credit history so that your credit score is high and you don't make stupid mistakes like opening credit cards that you're never going to need. So how do we do that? Because we want to build a credit history, but how do we do that unless we have a credit card? So, oops, sorry about that. Okay, so you have a couple of different options for in terms of getting a credit card. And I am one of these people that would say that every young person should have a credit card. I shouldn't say every. Most young people should have a credit card, especially if you're college age, because that's the way when you're going to learn how to use it responsibly. But as I'll show you in a little bit, it's really, really important that you use it correctly. Okay, so you can apply for your own credit card. Good luck with that. The odds of you getting your own credit card are very, very unlikely. And I'll tell you why. How old are you? 18. Do you have a job? No. No? Okay. So how are you going to pay back the credit card? You're not. That's what the credit card company is going to say. It says, you don't have an income. We don't know if you're going to pay it back. I'm sure you're an honorable person, but we don't know if you're going to pay it back. Because that's what they look at. What's your income? So if you don't have an income, you don't have an employment history, they're not going to give you a credit card. So that's theoretically possible to get your own credit card, but very unlikely that you will. So then you get another option. Apply for your own credit card with the parent as a co-signer. So mom or dad is responsible if you don't pay that credit card. It's an option, but mom or dad is just as responsible for the debt as you are on a credit card like that. So mom or dad might not be real excited about doing that. But it is an option. So third option that's available to you is something called a secured credit card, which is a really interesting credit card because you're really using your own money. What you do with a secured credit card is you go to a bank, get a secured credit card, and you put $1,000 or $2,000 in an account, and that's how much money you can charge on your credit card. So the bank is holding the amount of money that you're able to spend on that credit card. You will never be able to spend more than that amount of money. However, it does build your credit history. So that's another option. The other option that we did with our kids is have a parent add you as what they call an authorized signer on one of their credit cards, which means that the child is able to use mom and dad's card. And in effect, you get their credit score and their credit history. So what's the problem with doing that? Anybody? Yeah, that's right. If your parents have a credit score of 350, you're in trouble. It's not going to help you at all. You're better off getting your own card. You don't want to be on your parents' card if they have a credit score of 350. The other problem with it, from the perspective of the parent, is your kid, unless they're really, really super responsible, are going to use that credit card, because you want them to use the credit card, but who knows what they're going to be spending it on. So there's pros and cons to each of those. To me, the best way is if the parent has a good credit rating, is to add your child as an authorized signer. Give them their own card. Because remember, even when you're adding them as an authorized signer, you as the parent are still going to get the bill, the credit card statement every month, and it is going to show you what your child charged on that. But you have to make sure that your own credit score is decent so that your child would be able to get the benefit of that. Otherwise, I would go your own credit card with the parent as a co-signer, or just get a secured card. But the bottom line is, here's what we want to do, because we want to build this credit history. And the number one way to build your credit history is to use your card, pay the balance due every month in full. And by using it, I'm talking about going to Chipotle, spending $12, and that is the only charge that you have on your credit card for the whole month. You get your statement, and it says that the payment's due in 2 weeks. Pay the $12 right away, so you have a zero balance, and then the next month, you spend $12 at Starbucks, and you pay it off the next month. That is the biggest factor that is going to go into your credit score, is just the repayment history. But the interesting thing about credit scores is they look at repayment history. They do not look at the amount that you charged. It's just, here's what the charge was, here's when the payment was made. So that is the number one way to do it. There's a couple other things. At the very least, pay the minimum amount so that you avoid a late fee. Keep your credit utilization low, and believe me, if you're only charging one time a month at $10, you're keeping it very low. Don't apply for multiple credit cards. Some of the stuff really won't apply to students. And don't close out old credit cards. So, see, that's the reason I didn't close out that Firestone card that I've never used. Okay. Understand, though, if you're carrying around a credit card in your wallet, the power that you have to do good and to do harm with that credit card. And the reason I say that is because, as we've seen, if you look at the credit report that I have, there's stuff going back there, 13, 14 years, that's still on my credit report. So for young people, you make those mistakes that you do sometimes in just learning, is be aware that that stuff doesn't just disappear off your credit report. It stays on there for a long, long time. So you want to make sure that you're not starting out in the wrong direction and making mistakes that are going to stay on your credit report for a very, very long time. And I'll just give you an example. So here's something else about the credit card. So every month you get a statement from your credit card company. And your statement looks like this. There's a lot of information on here, okay? One of the things it says is it's the total of everything that I charged in the last 30 days. So this was a bill. My wife was in BSF a few years ago, and at the end of the year, they bought the teaching leader a number of presents. And so my wife was responsible for charging him and then collecting the money from people. So I have $3,880 on there, $1,500 from Best Buy, and $1,300 from Flowers and Arts. So it ended up being a pretty big credit card bill. Again, $3,880. And so what they have on here is, here's the amount that you could pay to just be done with it, pay it off completely, but they also give you the option to make a minimum payment amount. Well, why wouldn't you pay the minimum payment amount? Because if you pay the minimum payment amount, all you're doing is extending that loan and paying interest on it for a longer and longer period of time. So you can pay it off every month, and even if you pay it off every month, they won't charge you interest. So really what they did is they gave you a 30-day loan for interest-free. But if you don't pay off the whole thing after 30 days, then you're going to get charged interest. And let's just say that you were only paying the minimum payment amount. I'm just going to take an example where a credit card bill that has $1,200. They will tell you what the minimum payment is. It's right here on your statement. The minimum payment is $24. If you only paid the minimum payment, it would take you 9 years to pay that off. And here's the other thing. The total amount that you would pay was $2,602. The bill is only $1,200. So your $1,200 bill, over the life of that credit card payment, you just paid more than twice that, $2,600. Okay? Here's another example. This is the bill I have right in my hand, $38.80, okay? Minimum payment, $77 per month. 9 years it'll take me to pay off. $8,500 total. So really what I'm doing is, when I pay back that way, is not only am I paying back the $3,880 that I charged on the card, but I'm paying off an additional, almost $5,000 in interest that's going to the credit card company. So, one more example, $5,900. I mean, you look at that, $5,900 to $12,791. So, that's why I go back to that earlier slide. Just be aware of the power that you have in a credit card and using a credit card, because you can use it for good, but you can also really get into financial trouble using credit cards. And you really want, it's really, really important for you young people to build that credit history so that it is a favorable credit history. And by favorable, I mean you charge, you pay it off every single month, not the minimum payment, the whole thing, month after month after month. That is very, very important to do. As Brian mentioned at the beginning, the other seminar that I did a while ago was student debt. And I won't spend a whole lot of time on student debt, but just talking about 4 different kinds. And for anybody that has student loans, you're probably waiting anxiously to find out what the Supreme Court decides about repaying. But either way, you need to start repaying those loans. I believe it's at the end of September. So for, I don't know how long it's been, 3 years since you had to pay them. Most loans don't work that way, gang. Okay, so subsidized loans are based on financial need. Maximum amount, you can borrow $3,500 per year, interest rate. Government pays the interest while you're in school. That's why they're subsidized. The unsubsidized ones, not based on financial need. That's the big difference. So, pretty much the same thing. The one that I really would like to focus on, though, is this one here, because there's limits, very strict limits, on the amount of student loans, those first 2 types. There's very strict limits on the amount that you can take out. Parent loans, there is no limit. Well, there is a limit, but this is where I see people really get into trouble, because it's not based on financial need. It's equal to the school's cost of attendance minus other financial aid received. And There was a friend of mine that I was just talking to a couple of weeks ago. He's got a daughter who will be attending Northwestern University in Evanston in the fall. Their cost of attendance is about $88,000 a year. Not for 4 years, a year. So, and it's his goal to pay for the whole thing for his daughter, which I totally disagree with, but, you know. So, but he could conceivably take out loans for that whole amount. And, because they're really, for all practical purposes, the cost of the school is the limit on the loan amount that you can take. And again, that's why I see people really get into financial trouble. And so it is an area that people get in over their heads with. Some higher interest rate, interest begins to accrue immediately as soon as you start taking out loans. And then there's another type of loan just called private loans. It's the same thing with private loans, is that they can be very, very troublesome. They do require a credit check. But here's what I'd like to focus on with this, because this is a great question. When I did the presentation a few months ago on paying for college, there was a mom and a high school age kid who I think was just starting college, and the young man asked, what's the big deal about a little bit of debt? You know, and that was a great question. What's the big deal? You know, what's wrong with a little debt? And here's how I would answer that. A reasonable amount of debt is probably not going to ruin a young person's life. If they finish college, that's the big if they finish college. If you get 3 years into college and you don't finish, so you've had 3 years of college expenses and you never finish, that might be a problem. But so what is a reasonable amount of debt? I'll give you 2 examples. No more than the approximate first year salary for the field that you're going to go into. So if you're going into engineering and you're going to get a job right out of school, making $80,000 or $90,000 a year, that person can probably afford more debt than somebody who's going into social work and not making nearly that much. So that can be kind of a good guideline. Another one is just use the limits for the direct student loan, and they have a limit of $31,000. That is actually about the average of the amount of student loan debt that people have today, is somewhere around, you know, between 28 and 30,000. But again, just like with credit cards, when you borrow, guess what? People want to be repaid. And again, the federal government, the exception, I guess they don't want to be repaid very badly, but they will start collecting their loan payments soon here. And so loans have to be repaid. And parents, the one thing that I would say to you as you're, because it looks like there's a lot of younger people in here that maybe aren't college age, the one thing that I would say to you is be careful about how much debt you take on to send your child to their dream school, because that is the #1 thing that you have control over when it comes to how much debt you're going to take, and that is the school you're going to go to. So sometimes you have to say no to your child. Say, that is not what your mother and father can afford. And I guarantee you that they might not understand at that time, but later in life, when they don't have a whole lot of college debt to pay off, they will be grateful. But that's parenting, isn't it? Delayed gratification, the whole thing. Okay, this to me is a really scary chart. Just shows student loan debt by age group. Look at that amount in the age group of 50 to 61 and 62 and up. It's the fastest growing age group. Those people are not going back to school. They're paying for their kids' college education. So, and I'm a retirement plan guy, so when I see people that are directing all of their retirement plan money to paying for their kids' college education instead of saving for retirement, kids, you don't want your mom and dad to do that either. Because let me tell you what will happen if they're not able to save for retirement. When you're older, you'll be married, mom and dad are going to say, can I come live at your house because I don't have enough money? So it goes both ways. All right. I'll just give you some examples because here's what I mean about a little debt, okay? You take the average amount, $31,000. The normal repayment period for student loans is 10 years. So $372 a month for 10 years that you're going to be paying. Let's say you have $62,000, so you have twice that much. $745 that you're going to be paying. $120,000, and there are people that have $120,000 in debt. And here's $160,000. I have a story right here where a woman had written in, said her and her husband have $160,000 in debt, and they would like to purchase a home, and they were asking for somebody's advice, a financial advisor's advice on how they should go about that. And if somebody had written to me and said, I have $160,000 and I'm thinking about buying a house, I would have said, not a chance. Pay off your debt first. But $160,000, that's $1,922 a month for 10 years. $24,000 you're paying. You can buy a really nice house for $24,000 a year in mortgage payments. So again, with the student loan, just be super, super careful about how much student loan you take out. Okay. All right. With a group of people like this, I can't pass by without talking about one more topic. It's the greatest mathematical discovery of all time. It's the most powerful force in the universe. It's the eighth wonder of the modern world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pay it pays it. What am I talking about? Compound interest. Thank you, adults. The magic is doing the simple things repeatedly and long enough to ignite the miracle of the compound effect. So I'm going to give you two examples. Compounding is really just growth on growth on growth. So it's investing and then just letting those investments grow and compound, okay? Unfortunately, compounding works the opposite way when you're paying interest. So, and that's what that, in the bottom left-hand corner, he who understands it earns it. He who doesn't understand it pays it. If you're in debt, you're paying it based on compound interest. But I'm going to give you two examples, okay? So, which would you rather have? $1 million today. So, bill, and I'm going to take a penny, okay? You get the million, I get the penny. Good deal, huh? Okay? But what I forgot to tell you is this is a magical penny, and it's going to double every day for 31 days. So I'm going to take a month that has 31 days. So on the very first day of July, this is going to double. And by the end of the month, I get what's ever in that account, and you get your $1 million. You okay with that?
Penny mathematically speaking would actually be a lot more valuable than $1 million in 31 days.
Is this guy a math major or something? Yeah, very good. So if you take a penny double every day, you will come up with, after 31 days, you come up with $21,474,000. The amazing thing, though, is that if you took the $1 million, you still look like the smartest guy after 26 days, because this hasn't even gotten up to $1 million after 26 times doubling. That's an example of compound interest. Now, if you invest money, it's not going to double every day, and it's certainly not even going to double every year, but the principle is the same, just the principle of compounding. Let me show you one other example. And So $1 million today, or penny doubled every day. Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 examples. Mary starts saving at age 22. So the very first job she gets, she's going to start saving. She saves $2,400 a year for 10 years. Total saved, $24,000. And then she stops saving at age 22, but she leaves the money there. She doesn't touch the money. Or you take the guy, in stories like this, the women are always the smart ones, the guys are the stupid ones. So he starts saving, when he's 22, he's not interested in saving money, So he's going to wait until he's age 32. And he saves the same amount each year, but he's got to save it for 34 years until he's age 65. So the total amount he saved is $81,600. Stop saving at age 65. So you know the moral of the story, so I think you can guess who ends up with more money. The difference is Jack ends up with $648,000, which is not bad, $648,000. Mary, even though she stopped saving at age 32, she ends up with a little over $1 million. That is the miracle of compounding. And the miracle of compounding only works if you have time. Do I look like I have time? I don't have time. Do you guys look like you have time? Absolutely. So my moral and the lesson I would leave for you guys is when you get that first job and you start making money, don't spend all that money. Save some of it. Yeah, retirement's a long ways away, but it's going to happen sometime. And people think it's going to get easier to save money. I'm just starting out in my career. I'm now making that much money. It's really hard for me to save money right now. There's always an excuse. Yep, you're shaking your head. It never gets any easier. Never gets any easier. So my advice to you is let the miracle of compounding work for you, and do that is by planting those seeds when you're young and letting the money grow, okay? If anybody wanted to see, I have that little chart between John and Mary, and it just shows you every year. There's a whole bunch of copies right there. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is something called stewardship. That's a big word that most of the adults in the room probably don't even know what it means. So I'll tell you what it means. God owns everything. Whoops, I'm going to go back to this page. I'm going to give you an example. Okay, so what is stewardship? This is my family, okay? Over on the left, that's my son Christian and his wife Ellie. They live in Chicago. My wife is the third person from the left, and then me, and then my other son Tony and his wife Abby, and their dog Dobby. Anybody know where the name Dobby comes from? I didn't know it, believe it or not, but both my sons are big Harry Potter fans. So that's their dog Dobby, okay? Every once in a while when they go out of town, they ask us to take care of Dobby. Like they're leaving tomorrow to go up to Grandview for the 4th of July weekend, so we're going to get Dobby for 4 days, okay? At the end of the weekend, so next Tuesday, they're going to come back. And do you think that I had that dog for 5 days? Do you think that makes that dog mine? Do you think that they'll want it back at the end of the 5 days? Yeah, probably. So I am not become the owner of that dog just because I had it for 5 days. So really what I was doing was a steward of it. My wife and I were stewards of that dog. We were taking care of the dog, but it's not ours, okay? And so the principle of stewardship is God owns everything. Everything. You want proof of that? Here's verse 24. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world and all its people belong to him. To the Lord your God belong the heavens, even the highest heavens, the earth and everything in it. The heavens are yours, and yours also the earth. You founded the world and all that is in it. God owns everything. So what does that mean to us? It means he owns your time, he owns your talent, and he owns your treasure, like your money. You are not the owner of that money. You are just the steward of it. And I think that's really, really important to keep in mind, that we are just the stewards of what God has entrusted to us. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's give Steve a hand. That was amazing. And we're going to give you a chance to ask some questions here in just a second, but I want to ask you all a question before we make Steve answer questions. So, what was something Steve shared today that was either an insight or surprising to you? Anybody here like that surprised me? Or you guys have all this down? All right, yeah. I'm going to bring you the mic so the video can hear you.
I had no idea that closing old credit cards actually impacts your credit score.
Yeah, that's good. That's good information. Yeah.
I didn't realize we should open a credit card for our kid. We've been doing like debit, so you see where the money goes.
Yeah, I loved that piece of advice, as my other job attests to. All right, somebody else. Awesome. Okay, who's got a question for Steve today? Because you have a wealth of knowledge in front of you right now. That deal he talked about, where if you save, it was $2,400 a year between now and the time that you are 32. You're going to be millionaires if you just keep it there, right? That's like shocking to me. Yeah. All right, so who's got a question? Yeah, yeah.
If you're putting your kid on for an authorized signer, I know this for a fact that it works. Your kid never has to use it. Maybe they can use it one time, then you cut up the credit card, you never let them use it ever again. My kid doesn't even know, my older daughter doesn't even know that she's an authorized signer. Okay, she's 23, she's got 25 years of credit history on a card.
There you go. Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, somebody else. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. As long as you have responsible parents, so stay on your parents, guys.
That's right. You gotta have responsible parents.
Yeah. That's the key. Steve's a responsible parent, yeah. Somebody else, question? Yeah. Okay. So the question for those online was, so they actually have to use it, and the answer was use it one time and then cut it up. All right, somebody else? Yeah? You guys are brave. Thank you for asking questions, because other people are wondering them.
Do you need a credit card to like buy a house and all of that stuff? Because personally, I just have grown up not using one, so.
Do you need one? No, you don't absolutely need one, but what is going to happen is, remember that list of things, like applying for a mortgage or a loan? They will pull, whoever is your potential bank that's going to lend you the money, they're going to pull a credit report on you. And if you have no history of using credit cards at all, they don't know whether you're going to be a responsible borrower or not. And so you might, number one, you might have a harder time getting your loan, or number two, they will give you a loan, but they'll charge you a higher interest rate than the person who they can see their history, and it's very, responsible use of the credit. So, do you need one? I would say that it's important to have one. Yeah, I mean, it'll be hard to get around not having one.
Yeah, the reason that so oftentimes you hear don't have a credit card is because there's so many lessons, right, of people who use it irresponsibly. And so a credit card that's used responsibly, like a debit card, is a different thing than a credit card that, and the thing is, if you're a compulsive buyer, if you're going to use it for emergencies that you have no plan on how you're going to spend that back, you're going to find yourself in trouble really, really, really quick. And so, good advice. All right, somebody else? Questions? Awesome. Well, Steve is going to stick around for just a little bit. If you've got a personal question for him, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one other thing. Does anybody know who Morgan Housel is? Housel? Okay, so Morgan Housel is a guy, he used to be a financial columnist for the New York Times. And he wrote a book recently. It's really a fascinating book called The Psychology of Money. And it's not about investing at all. It's about just the way that human beings approach money and their finances and stuff like that. But so he wrote this book, and recently he started a podcast. And I was listening to one of the podcasts, and he wrote this letter to each of his young children. He's got a young boy and a young girl. And he wanted those kids to open those letters up when they get to be 18 or 20 years old. And he had a lot of good stuff in there. But the one thing that really stuck out to me the most is he said, and I think this is really good advice for young people, especially as you start thinking about a career and going to college. It says, do not stay in a job that you hate because you unwittingly made a decision when you were 18 years old and picked your college major. Very few people know what they want to do at that age. Many people still don't know what they want to do when they're twice that age, which is absolutely true. It's okay to change your mind and change your career direction. And I think that is so true because I see people in my job who are absolutely miserable doing what they're doing because they made a decision when they were 20 years old about what their college major was going to be. It's okay to change your mind. That is just fantastic advice.
Best advice you're going to hear this week for sure, because that is so true. All right, we've got two giveaways. They're both from Seven Corners. They're these reusable mugs. So here's what we're going to do. The first one, if you are currently in college, that would mean people who just graduated from high school. That's you all the way up to college. Stand up for me, all right? If you're currently in college, stand up. All of you stand up. Well, stand up, sit down, all right? If your college is starting the next semester in July, sit down. All right, so actually stand up. If you're July, keep standing. Don't do that. All right, here's what I want to find out. Who's starting first? So when do you guys start up? What's your date? Late August? August 21st? September 10th? 21st? Oh. Do we let Caleb have it? Do we let him have it? All right, are you before the 21st? All right. Well, you're the 21st. There you go. You're the 21st. There you go. All right, we got two winners, August 21st, and that's it for giveaways today. All right. So sorry about that. I was actually going to ask, who's the youngest person in the room today? If you're in junior high, would you stand up? Any junior hires here today? All right. All of my junior hires that are here, you will be the wealthiest junior hires, adults here, if you follow his advice. I actually heard about somebody. Okay, so here's your prize, junior hires. I heard about somebody not long ago who did the compound saving things with all of their money that they got for their birthday and their babysitting jobs and then their jobs. And they never spent a cent between the time they started babysitting, like at 11 years old, to the time they graduated high school, because they figured, Mom's going to buy me clothes. Dad's going to take care of my stuff. I'm just going to ask them for movie money when I go out. So they didn't spend any of their own money. They put it into a high yield savings account. And this girl was a millionaire based on what she earned from junior high through the end of high school by the time she got done. She had some wise investments. Her dad was a really wise financial guy. Didn't add anything to it, though. Just used her. So junior hires, there's your advice, all right? So, yeah. Thanks for coming today. It's been awesome having you. If you want to come to one of these future lunch and learns, invite somebody with you. There's some great stuff coming up this summer beyond this. That was awesome.
Oh, that was
Thank
fun.
you.
That was fun.